Hey folks, welcome back. Here we are with Marianne once again in the shower. We're ready to put on her colors. As you can see, I put the shadow on the background, probably nothing complicated, just implied tile, the shower head, a little bit of plants here at the very bottom. Very simple. Most of the background is going to be sky. But I got her looking the way I want. I got her proportions the way I want them. I got the balance the way I want it. I got the shade layers pretty much the way I want them. Excuse me, having some nice little glass of branch water here. And so we're about ready to go. I'm going to leave these sketch lines intact because I'm probably going to work with them. So I'm just going to basically make them vanish while I'm working in the color. And when I am done with the color for this, I'm going to make another video at another day where I'm taking off her bikini, I'm editing it out and doing a nude version, and I'm going to have that video for my $12 tiers on Patreon, and I'll have the finished picture available on Patreon as well for all tiers. I have questions open from my last video, not really questions, just some comments here. The guy, the guy Falco with a cat face asked me if I, instead of saying, hey, what's up with, he asked me if I actually did work on something called Lovely Pets Chapter 2. No, I did not. I have no idea what it is. However, someone else commented after that. Scott said, Lovely Pets is by Chachi, not Jay. And that's pretty cool. I like Chachi's work. I'm familiar with it. Let's see. So... most of the background is going to be sky, so I'm just going to sort of throw blue on it. Go ahead and throw in a little variation, a little lightness. This is just all optional shit. I mean, you can do all this kind of weird stuff in whatever order you want. It doesn't really matter. I like to shade before I color. I don't know why. It just sort of makes it... Damn, come on, Photoshop. Give it the program. It just makes it a little more... I don't know. It helps me focus more on just the shading and not so much worrying about the separation of colors and stuff like that. So, go ahead and just merge those together. Normally Photoshop is smooth as butter on this machine, but I think because I'm actually working with 400 DPI instead of, I usually work in 300, maybe it's kind of having a little conniption, I don't know. It's just being just a tiny bit slower. So basically what I do with this phase is I just throw on flats and make sure they look okay. Also got some other questions here. Someone mentioned I was a Fallout fan. Yes, of course I'm a Fallout fan. Fallout was the first game that really got me into sort of exploration as a genre, sort of a genre I really didn't know I knew. And I've kind of been hooked ever since. And I should say Fallout 3. I know there's going to be purists who are going to say, well, the isometric Fallout games were better, blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, okay. I mean, it's whatever, I would say. I think isometric games, and I've played isometric RPGs, they're okay. But they do kind of take, like I've said it before in other streams I've had, they kind of take you out of the world. They pull you away from it, and it doesn't feel quite the same. It doesn't. You feel like you're just sort of God managing a character. You don't feel like you're really, like you really are playing a character personally. But I do like the tactical advantages that you get on isometric. I'm not a huge guy. I'm not big. Another problem with isometric games for me is I'm not big on party management. Not a huge fan of that. You know, I remember playing Dragon Age Inquisition and the original Dragon Age game even, and I just kind of, you know, I never let things get too complicated. I always just wanted to sort of set a course and then let the other people around me, with rare exception, I just kind of let them do whatever it is they wanted to do. If I noticed they were completely fucking up, I would maybe take control of them a little bit, but wasn't a huge fan of party management. It was neat. I do like some tactical party management on turn-based games are pretty neat. Like I remember doing that for Wasteland 2, which I had a lot of fun with. Okay. Just want to make sure I didn't. Looks like I stuck to the lines pretty good on that one. So. Okay. But I'm actually kind of looking forward to more Elder Scrolls games, I think, because the world is a little prettier than in Fallout. And I love exploration, and I wish more games would emphasize the fun of exploring and uncovering things. And I don't know what I think about these procedurally generated games that are coming out now, where, like No Man's Sky, because when I hear, and I don't know how the technology has evolved or it's getting better, but whenever I hear procedurally generated, I think, okay, you know, big but boring. You know, we're going to get a lot of stuff, but it's going to be, oh, here's another permutation of the same thing I saw in over here. You know what I mean? And that kind of worries me a little bit. So I have reservations about about games like No Man's Sky, and it is kind of a catch-22. Like, you know, when you play a Fallout game for the first time, when you play like Skyrim for the first time or whatever, these worlds, they never change no matter how many times you play through them. They're always going to be the same, which means that they can get all detailed and rich with them and all this stuff. But unfortunately, it means that you will never get that same feeling you got. You will never get that same thrill you got playing it a second time if you uncovered everything. You know, every now and then you can go through a playthrough and oh my god, I don't remember this area, or I completely missed this area last time. And you can kind of get that sense of exploration again, but it's not common. You know, there's not that whole sense of the entire world is going to be new to you again, which I guess procedural generation is trying to ameliorate. But the problem is of course, how do you then make the world as interesting? And this is part of the things that I've mentioned this before about doing this style of where I do this digital inking is I should probably study, like get into like painting and shit like that. But one of the problems is I kind of don't necessarily want it to look like a coloring book, and when I do pencil work, I can kind of fade the pencils or tailor the pencils to where it doesn't quite look like that. And I'll probably try to do the same thing here. Well, someone did ask me, you know, they with my penciled work, they said, you know, hey, you know, what program do you use to draw in? And I said, oh, I draw on a piece of paper. They go, really? And so apparently I can make digital lines look like pencils, or pencils look like digital lines sometimes. I don't know. But anyway. All right. Someone asked me if I'm going to actually work to make uploads like this a more regular thing. I'm not going to be on a schedule. I do want to practice more digital stuff, which is conducive to making videos and uploading them. So probably when I do practice sketches, and presumably if I can make them suitable for YouTube, as in, no nudity or sex or anything like that, then sure, I see no reason why I wouldn't, you know. But I can't say for sure how often I will do that, just because of the nature of what I do and the constraints of time. I'm at a point where I'm kind of maxed out. Like I'd have to like, deep six my personal life in order to get any further work done. Whoa, I forgot a shade area. There we go. Oops. Let's get rid of those. Okay. So I can't take on any other like scheduled obligations. You may have noticed like I brought back Original Life because I have ideas about things I want to do, but there's no way I can schedule it. There's no way I can say, yeah, I'm going to do 2 pages a week or even 1 page a week, because things happen, and you get all busy with stuff, or the girl wants to go do something for the weekend, and your whole weekend gets absorbed. Like when I didn't have much of a social life, I kind of just, for a long time, I was just kind of this workaholic, who I would forego parties and friends and just stay home and work on stuff. And I guess it helped at the time kind of build where things are now. So I had weekends to do stuff. I could say, okay, Saturday I'm going to do this in the morning, and then I'll have the rest of the day to kind of relax. I don't have that freedom anymore, because like sometimes my whole weekend days are taken up. Okay. All right. Someone else asked, and I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Someone else asked me like what kind of what kind of stuff do you plan on doing in the future? Like if I'm going to do any other kind of video content, or just art videos with the occasional gaming video. And I don't know, maybe, whoops. Maybe, I'm not really sure. I wouldn't mind doing more gaming videos, but I'm not even sure how much people like those, because when I did, this is going to add a little bit of like standard variation, not really a tan line per se, but variation in the fact that there's going to be more than one variation other than just a tan line. The fact that if she wears shorts, if she wears jeans, her thighs maybe just be kind of like gradiently lighter than her other areas. Her arms would probably be the darkest. Extremities, things that are going to be exposed to the sun even more. I kind of wanted to just put that in there. It's very subtle. You probably won't even notice it, but it's something I've started doing, now, as opposed to just regular highlighting or whatever. But I was saying I recorded some more Dark Souls last night, and I'm trying to build a thief character with a bit of focus, not like my first thief build, but and I don't want it to be green. And I'm not sure, because like the first Dark Souls video I uploaded got like 800 views, at almost 900, and then the second one got like 50, and the third one got like 70, so it's like, okay, well, interest has obviously dropped off like in a huge way. So I'm not really sure if it's worth the time to like upload and populate the channel or whatever. Most people know me from my art, and that's probably what most people are going to be interested in when they come here. But I'll probably keep doing video. I kind of, I don't think I'm going to do like step-by-step gameplay video where here's my entire gaming experience um, in one, just sort of one series that's like 80 videos long, you know, which I've seen. I actually like watching those when other people do them, um, when when they don't act stupid about it, like when they don't think that they're the entertainment, when they realize the game's the entertainment. I like to see what kind of strategies they use, what kind of builds they use. Sometimes they discover things I didn't discover before. Sometimes I'm interested in the game, but there's no way I'm going to have time to play it, and I will watch a gaming video then because I just want to see what the game is about. Um, like I'm probably going to do that with Mirror's Edge. Find complete playthroughs because the game looks interesting. Like I kind of like the mechanic, but I know that I'm just not going to have any time at all to to actually do the game. So. It's kind of all about, when there's 5 games you're interested in and you only have time to maybe play 3, because I don't just play games. I tend to pick the games that I think I'm really going to get into. I pick the games that I'm really going to be absorbed in, and I play the shit out of those games. So I look for deep, complicated games, which I guess is why I like games like Fallout. And I also like Dark Souls has great replayability because not only can you do different builds and use different weapons and stuff like that, but it's just an immensely satisfying combat system for me anyway, I find. So. Doesn't look too... I'm hoping it doesn't look too... Maybe I should dirty her blonde up a little bit. That's much better, I think. Okay. I'm going to go with that. So yeah, the 2 games I won't have time to play, but I'm mildly interested in. I'll watch someone play them on YouTube or something like that. I am interested in other games. Like, I kind of have a feeling that, like, I'm sort of going through Far Harbor as well. I'm probably going to do that while I wait for Dark Souls DLC to come out. And then I'm thinking of maybe getting into Mount & Blade just to see what it's like. I remember Steam shoving that game in my face all last year constantly. And I don't know if the game's any good. I have no idea. It looked like a very simpler kind of. I shouldn't say simple, but I should say the graphics were very a little more plain than, say, like Witcher 3, for instance. So I don't know. Maybe it's cool. But it was maybe a bigger, maybe a more interesting world. The more problem is like Witcher 3's world was interesting, but it was very samey. You couldn't just open free range explore it. So I'll find out. I may actually read up on reviews of it and see if I can find some gameplay online for it. How much I should keep her colors separated so it's just easy to get in there when I have to edit this picture. I don't normally like editing pictures like this where it's like, here's the regular version, here's the nude version, and here's the version where this is happening and that is happening. It's something that's becoming very common in adult pieces, and it kind of bugs me because, well, I draw a lot of comics, and if you want to draw a sequential section, segment where here she is orally servicing the guy, and here he is finishing inside of her, and the only thing that's different is like her facial expression and a little bit, and so you end up with someone uploads like 17 pictures, and it's all almost the same thing except for a minor change every time. That's a little bother. It's one of my peeves. I hate those things, but they seem to be popular, so whatever. But I don't like doing stuff like that. But this is just kind of an exception for YouTube. Let's actually get in here. Okay, let's merge those. I'm gonna keep that layer separate because that's an area that's going to have to be kind of seamless when I make her naked. Never thought of her as a makeup wearer, so not like her mom. We'll just kind of pinken up her lips a little bit. We're not going to do. It'd almost be better maybe if I faded it a little bit. Yeah, I don't care. All right, we'll leave it like that. Now, a little bit brighter. I hate to make it sound like on the video game front, I'm kind of killing time before Civilization 6 comes out, but might not be entirely inaccurate in a way. Okay. Overall, this is a very simple picture, so this shouldn't take too long. I'm going to leave those freckles on a separate, just so they're easy to work around. Now we get to decide what color her bikini should be. And this is something you can just change really quickly if you don't like how it turns out. So I almost want to go with like a red and a white color. Maybe that's my horrible lifeguard fetish coming out. I don't know, but lifeguards don't wear two pieces, so. Red's kind of a nice clash. Stands out from the environment. Blue tends to blend, even though I like blue too. But it'll blend with the sky a little bit in the background. I do wonder if I even did lighter lines that bled the color through even more, if that wouldn't be better, but I can play around with it some other time. Right now with this, I just want to be pretty basic. If I do make any more video game videos, I'm not sure what kind of game would actually be good for that, because I tend to play games that you get really involved in, and I tend to play games that you do a lot of exploration, and I might not be the most entertaining person to watch play a game in that respect. I also tend to play them for me, and I think when I'm playing to an audience, I'm not as into the game as I otherwise would be. I think I'm going to add some white flowers to this later on after I finish filling in this. But I really do kind of like to feel like I'm in the world of the game. So when a game takes care to build a world, I really appreciate that. I have a lot of games where I would love to take sort of the mechanic of this game and blend it with that. Someone mentioned it would be really cool to do take like the tactical engine of the XCOM game and apply it to a bunch of different canon universes. Like if you had, imagine if you had a Mass Effect tactical turn-based game, which was basically the XCOM engine applied to Mass Effect. It'd be perfect, It'd be pretty cool, actually. It's weird, I take all this time, I spend it talking about video games while I'm doing this art. My Aaron comic is taking longer than I expected. People on Patreon kind of know what I'm talking about. But, I mean, that's a good thing. I'm not trying to constrain it. I'm just having him go through all the relationships that he has, and however long it takes. And I'm kind of happy with that. It's kind of nice to kind of work on him for a little bit and go through his mind. But up next, I will be taking a vote on what to work next. There are some comics that keep coming up in that queue and keep barely losing out. So I know the further chapter of the Rachel story is coming soon, and that'll be up for vote. I've been thinking about doing a comic based on this version of Marianne. I've kind of been thinking about her. There is that coming to a head as a possibility. And there are a few other projects that have been voted on in the past. With, if something really kind of gets no inspiration, I kind of let it drop off my radar and don't really bring it up again. If someone doesn't, like, if it only gets like one or two votes from the steering committee on Patreon, then I'll kind of just let it drop. But fortunately, that hardly ever happens to anything. I don't know if it's good or bad that what my fans want to see tends to be pretty varied. When something loses a vote, or when they lose a voting round, it's never by like a huge stretch. There's usually a nice, decent number of people who still are voting for it. Usually. I can imagine there might be some projects that I can think of that probably wouldn't get a lot of attention. All right. This is the fun part. This is usually a lot of work, but it can pay off. If you often approach a task like this and go, ugh, I gotta spend all this time doing all that and whatever, and it's like, well, yeah, but it'll pay off if you do it and it looks good. And because it's a pattern, you're not going to have to draw it like a gazillion times exactly like that. You're going to have a lot of stuff on the edge and whatever. So it's not like it's not going to be miserable. But you will be happy when you're done. All right. I know there are people who could probably easily like cheat this. They could just throw in something in Photoshop and have it render it or something like that. But when you do these patterns, don't forget to show the curvature of whatever clothing or covering, whatever the pattern is covering. It's much better than just having like plain red or, something like that. I do wonder what FromSoft is going to do next, since this is supposed to be the last Souls game. It is kind of interesting, though. We've only ever seen the Souls universe during dark times, like when the fire is fading or whatever. Uh, we've never really seen it when everything's cool and everyone's just happy and there's knights and folks and not everything's freaking hollow and crazy. We never really see that. Be interesting. I'm not sure what kind of game. I don't know if I'm not gonna have that. Like Bloodborne was cool. I don't know if putting Dark Souls mechanics in another setting is a recipe for success or not. I'm sure people will play it, and I'm sure they'll enjoy it. But there's something about a dark fantasy universe that I think it's just, I don't know why fantasy worlds are more popular in general than something else, like a Cthulhu Victorian fantasy that Bloodborne was. But it's something that I've just always noticed. I kind of, when I was coming up in fandoms and growing up and reading books and geeking out, for me, and it probably happened with, came from Star Wars as a kid, but for me, I was big on space and the near future and things like that. So I was into that stuff, and it was always funny to me that as popular as a piece of science fiction could be, something in some fantasy thing, with gremlins and hobbits and shit like that, was always more popular. And I'm guessing maybe it has something to do with how it's completely divorced from all reality, and maybe that appeals to a wider base. Like the future kind of implies some sense of modernism with modern problems, and fantasy just seems really out there. It's so alien. There's absolutely there's barely any corollary with how our current world looks and functions. Although doing alternate fantasy worlds is a little interesting because we tend to think of something close to the Middle Ages um, in our own timeline, but the Middle Ages were, it was a period of regression, at least for Europe. Everyone else was regressive too, but that was mainly because of, well, not mainly, it was because of philosophy and things like that, but mainly Europe could be threatened by other parts of the world because they were as regressive as the rest of the world, and in some cases more so. And so people tend to just tack that onto any kind of vision of a fantasy world. It was funny how in The Witcher 3, a game I really loved, you have this sort of medieval technology with kind of a Renaissance era economic system. You had banking and lending and stuff like that, and sort of a more robust system of economics, which kind of makes sense. I didn't really see a lot in the way, when I was playing Witcher, didn't see much in the way of sort of a sense, like a religious prohibition against, money making and lending and profit and stuff like that, which is what plagued Europe in the Middle Ages, and why, one of the reasons why it was so regressive. But it is funny how, in order to keep it a fantasy world, you have to do something to stifle innovation. So, because once you sort of that kind of freedom takes hold, that kind of philosophy takes hold, it didn't take Europe long to just really kind of advance. Not just military hardware, but just personal amenities and the understanding of the world around them, and the understanding of disease and stuff like that. Suddenly the world got a lot smaller, people's lives got a lot better, people started living longer. You started having industrialization made items that were once reserved for royalty and nobility. They made them available to more and more people as they made them much more easy to manufacture, much more cheaply as well. You started coming up with things like scientific theory and whatever. But it could be that in the world like Witcher 3, I've often wondered this. One of the reasons why the Middle Ages are also called the Dark Ages in human history is because people believed in something that just wasn't true. People believed in, when people read the Bible, they took it really seriously. I don't mean like today where people go, people read the Bible on Sunday and they go, yeah, the money is the root of all evil. And then they nod their heads, and then the next day they go to their job and work overtime to get more money, and then they take it. They don't do anything evil with it. They just take it and they improve their lives with it, And they don't look down on someone who makes $100K a year if he's busting his ass for it, So in that respect, they kind of live this dual life where they don't take what they read super seriously, or in some cases they say things like, well, that's not really what Jesus meant by that. And I'm like, yeah, how do you know? You know what I mean? You don't. You just sort of want it to be true because you live in a Western society where we very clearly can tell that money is not the root to all evil, because we don't live in an era that Jesus lived in where people who had lots of money generally got it by permission from the state, by armed thugs, by exploiting other people because they didn't have developed economies back then. They didn't know any better back then. And, sort of all religions are kind of full of stuff like that. They didn't know any better back then. And so we realize that money isn't necessarily evil. So we have to kind of say, well, no, he just said it's one of the roots to evil. It's like, really? So, well, there we go. That's pretty cool. I'm going to leave these two layers separate so I can more easily manage them. Let's go ahead and save before we lose everything. Okay. Now we're going to be real simple. Most of you notice my color style is pretty simple, and I don't have any formal training. I don't have any, I've never taken classes in color theory or anything like that, and it probably shows. Everything I kind of do is just sort of like, I guess, amateurish in a way. But yeah, in the Middle Ages, they took their religion seriously. They thought it was real, and it wasn't. And whereas in worlds like on video games, like in The Witcher, in Elder Scrolls games and stuff like that, they believe things because those things are actually real. There actually are gods and malevolent forces and benevolent gods as well. And so it's not quite as cut and dry. So it's not like you can say, well, we should just ignore these gods so that we can advance ourselves. We should ignore what these powerful beings actually say and want so that we can do better. That's not really an option in a world where those entities are real. And that probably holds them back as well. Which is why, like, you can have the Elder Scrolls saga, and it goes on for like hundreds of gazillions of years, and they never really advance. They just have, they're still using swords, and there's no guns or anything. And although there is a printing press, I mean, there's got to be with all the books that are laying around, So that's going to be real simple. This one I'm going to oops, was in the wrong layer the whole time. Oh well, we'll live. It's not a huge deal. Okay, now we're going to do the skin. And I'm actually going to go over this layer. Whoops. Drag this up here. Okay. A little bit lighter, so that it lightens it, both, her sort of natural gradient and her darker skin, or her arms and face. We'll do another layer, make it really light. And this will probably be messed with even more because in the end she's going to be wet. So I'm going to do that part. Keep that. That's a little strong on her far away arm. I'm just going to take that away completely. Minimize that. Okay. Now, this is the hair and eyes. Where's the lips? Oh, those lips and freckles. Okay. I'm going to do the hair part, and then for the freckles and things, I'm just going to go over it. I'm making a lot of layers. Normally, I consolidate like tons and tons of these layers just to make it easier on myself. But because I'm going to go in and do some extensive editing with her clothing later, I want to keep a lot of these layers separate so that I can get them blended properly before I consolidate them and flatten them into another image, or and make another image out of it. So yeah, it is kind of frightening. What would it be like if there was just undeniable proof that the gods were real, and what form would that take? How would we? I think the world would actually be a lot different if that were the case. If there was no question, and they regularly meddled in the affairs of men. It'd be really scary. I have often thought about if I did make a fantasy world and with some kind of magic, what would that form take? And I think it would I would still have to make it some kind of system. I don't think I could do how it exists in the Elder Scrolls universe, where all you got to do is you can just go out into a field somewhere and just start practicing, and anyone can pick it up in time. At least as far as how it was in Skyrim. And I don't think I can do that, or where it's pretty much just a matter of study. It would have to be something very difficult to do, something very uncommon. And I had a friend, I have a friend, I should say, who did sort of a version of it where he wrapped it up in an element that was in the world. And that was a pretty good idea, because you can have those elements take all kinds of different forms and permutations. And I'd probably explain it with some kind of weird bullshit science, like, if you have this element that weakens a part of the world, and you have other dimensions that then leak in to our world, I'm actually going to add a layer here and severely lighten, so her freckles can be lightened as well. But yeah, you'd have to explain it with some it weakens the states between universes or dimensions or whatever, and that actually causes magical properties to happen, and it's a pain in the ass to try to control it. So if you're uneducated, you're probably just going to kill yourself or something. And so you could use the element to infuse materials with enchantments, if you will, or you could if you wanted to become someone who could wield it as an extension of yourself, you'd probably have to undergo an uncertain and dangerous process of actually no. The uncertain and dangerous process of somehow enchanting your body, your blood, or something, and then only then if you had the ability to control it, which shouldn't come easy, and it's a dangerous, perhaps even a illegal process. Maybe I'm not sure. It would be something that would be awesome to explore in some kind of lore setting. Okay. I'm thinking for these, whatever they're called, petunias, I don't know what they are. I'm just going to really go in here and lighten them up with everything else. Let them just sort of be what they are, and then like that. Stop it. There we go. Okay. All right, we got the, well, hold on. The only problem with not consolidating layers is you lose track of where shit is. Put that off to the side a little bit, a little more spacing. Okay. I know I could label these layers, but I mean, who has time for that shit? And I get to find her eyeballs. There we go. Okay, that is a highlight layer, so let's just go ahead and use that. Is that not where her lips are? No, that is not where her lips are. Oh hell, let's go ahead and do the eyeballs then. Sometimes I've been wondering if I should like draw pupils so they represent the lighting around the character. I always tend not to, but I probably should. Just a little added extra, I guess, realism if you want. But I also know that when the human pupils dilate, the people are inexplicably more attractive to the human mind. And most humans can't explain why because they never notice the difference when they show them photographs. There's my layer. Okay. So you tend to kind of draw them probably a little bigger than they otherwise should be anyway. So. All right. Now we'll go ahead and work on the shiny bits. Is that my sketch layer? It is my sketch layer. This is kind of a time-consuming process. So, one of the things that I've often said about art, and people say, "How did you do that?" or "How did you do this?" or "How long did that take?" or "Wasn't this difficult to do?" And I'll say, usually things aren't necessarily difficult; they just take the time, to do correctly. And if you don't skimp on time, if you don't try to rush it or race it, you realize that, yeah, there's some shortcuts you can do here and there, but for the most part, there's no substitute for just taking the time to do it right. I think it's very easy to get frustrated when you see someone who's been doing something for a gazillion years just sort of glide through the process, and that kind of speed comes not with a trick or a step or a piece of advice, which is what I get asked all the time. But it actually, that kind of thing comes from just experience. Just you've been working on stuff like this for so long that it becomes second nature to you, and it's easy. There's really no other way to try it, and you're still gonna fuck up, but I mean, for the most part. She's going to be under the shower, so remember that skin is dimply. We'll pull back, make sure it looks okay for the most part. And we'll probably do the water in a separate layer because it can be tricky and it can be easy to mess up. But this is a straight down shower system, so it shouldn't be too hard. So for like skin, I'll use a lot of little bumps and speckles and things like that. You know. Kind of gloss the edges a little bit. And then when I go into the water layer, we'll do we'll have drips coming off of her body and stuff like that. And one thing I noticed about bathing suits, living here in Florida where I do, is you want to make them look wet when you draw them, but they usually are made of a material that doesn't look very wet when it's wet. The water kind of gets spaced out by the material, whatever it is they're using. So I still think it's like a judgment call. You can kind of do whatever you want. You still have to kind of apply it. You don't want it to look like it's totally dry. But bathing suits tend just to kind of, darken a little bit. They don't really, I don't know, some of them don't really gleam, at least so as far as I've noticed. That seam looks too strong. And you want to do this. See how it looks. I have a feeling this is going to be another long video, but that's okay. I do wonder sometimes for all the views these videos get, I wonder who actually, if anyone actually sits through the whole thing, listen to me talk and just, ramble and watching every little step. I do wonder if that actually happens, or if there's a lot of, okay, I'm going to kind of fast forward through this and, that kind of thing. So yeah, make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Sometimes it's good to zoom in, sometimes it's good to stay further back. You can kind of make sure things look the way you want them to, where at kind of the size that most people are going to look at it for anyway. also kind of a judgment call how much of a like reflective lighting you want to put in these shaded areas. You know, like maybe just a little bit. Like if there's no light in an area, but there's usually some light, you know. So, okay, now I can probably add some to this wall here because this wall should be wet as well. Not that it would be super visible. Sometimes with a picture like this, I could just like spend a lot of time just sort of going over a picture and adding little details here, little details here. Sometimes, of course, when I'm not taking a video of it, you know, it's very easy to kind of get involved with, you know, just okay, I'm going to put aside this day and just keep adding and keep adding and keep adding and doing little things and taking little chances here and there with how I render this or render that or whatever. And the pictures that I really like the most, that I'm most proud of, are usually pictures that are the product of that kind of thing. Like the picture of Red the otter fishing, that one picture I did, that was one of those. You know, I just took the day and said, you know, it was actually several days where it's just like, you know, I'm just going to take as much time as I want. I'm going to lose myself in this. I'm going to put on something nice to listen to as I'm working on it, and not even think about how much time it's going to do me. You know, you spend, you know, 10, 12 hours a day working on it, and then you come back the next day and keep working on it, and you know, you could be playing a game, you could be doing something, but actually, hold on, but you're not. You're just, you know, you look up, it's 10 o'clock at night, you've been working on that thing since 10 in the morning, and you feel good. And then when you're done, you're like, wow, that was so worth it. So it's just following a weird pattern here. I have a feeling it's going to be like largely behind her. I am kind of breezing through this here. Trying to draw a lot of curves like that because straight up shower water doesn't behave that way. Shower water goes up and down without a lot of deviation, without a lot of viscosity. You could probably also spend too much time getting the water spatter pattern or whatever you want to call it. It would be kind of nice to obscure this a little bit more, but I do wonder if I should like shadow the water or shade the water sometimes, because it kind of does have a shadow in real life, but it also could be a risky proposition if I tried. At least for a picture like this, I may, do some stuff with it later. Okay, I'm going to go with that for now. What I'm going to do is, see, I'm going to add some clouds, some simple clouds, and then I'm going to see if I can work on these lines a little bit. They're pretty stark right now. But that's not necessarily a bad thing because they look clean enough. So, but I want to see if lightening them doesn't help a little bit. All right. Good enough for an experiment where I'm trying to just sort of put a video together here. Where are my inks? It's those inks, and that's those inks right there. Whoops. Now, usually what I do when I have pencils is I will go in with a really light eraser and see if I can fade a lot of these lines that are inside. Whoops, that's a white airbrush. A lot of these lines that are inside the body, like this one here. I just hope by doing this it doesn't end up looking too jagged. I guess it looks okay. A lot of the leading edge stuff that doesn't have a shadow to it, I'll lighten it up. Which, I don't know. It almost does look a little ragged. These here. Oops, that's not the right line. Okay. Yeah. Damn it. I keep going to my brush. Get in there with these seams here and minimize those, that outer edge. This is coming out okay. I'm going to leave that far line intact. Okay. I think this may make a video for now. You can leave it at this, and I might fiddle around with this a little bit more, but for now I'm going to close this out, and what I'm going to do is for Patreon I'm going to go in and take off this bikini and do a naked version, and I'll have that video do that. Wait, go here, yeah, do this one. And I'll have that video up on Patreon for my $12 folks, and then the finished picture, of course, as I said earlier, will be available to every pledged tier. Okay. All right, I'm just going to put my signature on it when I'm done, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.